Roll Tide, everybody. We are live on Cover Crimson, brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use the promo code Crimson and take advantage of the start of March Madness. That is dead ahead. The SEC tournament starts, so use our promo code at mybookie.ag Crimson, and we'll talk more about that on the show. But we got a lot to get into today. We're going to focus on the defense, Bama's defense, and some of the comments that Kane Womack had, and then Clint's going to break those down for you and give his perspective. All that coming up right here, but thank you for hanging. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. Let's go. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie on a Monday. Live for those of you that are hanging. Like, subscribe, and give us a little bit of love as we hang. And don't forget, we're on the message board, $25 off right now, the annual subscription. So you need to do that. And there was a lot of talk after that. Basketball. It was the best basketball game in the history of basketball. I loved it. The Boogs were crying. We stunned them.
Mick.
But let's talk football. I just had
what's the dirty player talk with
so sick
with young blood.
They're over there like elbowing him, and when your guys get kicked out of the game because they're elbowing and hitting and stuff, man, come on. But we've grown accustomed to that. If you've watched any of the Iron Bowls over the years, it's not the first time that you get into this game and dirty stuff happens from the Boogs. But I'll tell you what, man, that was one of the best basketball games that I've ever seen at Alabama. So awesome. So I've been on a high with that, Clint. A high.
Yeah, it was a fun game. Stressful because it was like, that they played well. They got kind of a commanding lead, and then you let them start working their way back. It didn't feel like the Tennessee game necessarily, but yeah, I was worried right there at the end. They were going to figure out a way to lose another one, and instead they figure out a way to get it done. Give Mark Sears a lot of credit. I just want to point out, ever since Nate Oates made that move to kind of send a message to Mark Sears and the rest of the team as far as quote unquote benching him, it wasn't like an immediate thing necessarily, but I do feel like he's playing a lot better as of late, and that's made it. This is a good Alabama basketball team. They just got to have something kind of break their way a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I just think that we got the momentum that we need going into the SEC tournament. So roll tide, everybody, and feel good about it. Clint, I wouldn't have changed anything about that game. It was a roller coaster that needed to be a roller coaster to get the reaction. It got real quiet in there, and it's a loud arena. But anyway, we may see him again, so you don't want to be too happy. Bama plays basketball on Friday. All right, let's talk about the Bama defensive coordinator Kane Womack, Swarm defense, had a press conference, his first press conference on Friday, and kind of talked a lot about, guys coming back, which I thought was really a good way to get the thing started. And then hearing from some of the players, there is definitely a sense that they let themselves down, that they let the program down, and that they didn't uphold the Bama standard. And I love that.
Yeah, I feel like that it's we've talked about it a lot, but the more you talk to certain players, you talk to sources in the building, you talk to coaches, the coaches won't flat out tell you. The players won't. They'll be a little bit more they'll talk a lot about it a little bit more, but it's really the sources in the program and just the fact that everything that you're seeing them kind of say publicly, there's a stronger feeling behind all of it. Like they're not going to say exactly how they feel, but they do feel like that things kind of got away from them last year. They didn't play up to that standard. It was because they stopped doing some of the little things right. There was a lot of chaos and craziness behind the scenes. You're going from one guy who ran the program for close to 2 decades. I don't think we really talk about that enough. Like when you're used to kind of changing coaching staffs and everything, kind of people that are involved or that are in that building are used to change. Nick Saban had kind of done it one way. Now, granted, he was willing to adapt to what was happening on the field as far as the landscape of college football and some of the things as far as NIL. I'm not saying that everything in 2023 was the same as it was in 2009, but for the most part, and how things operated on a day-to-day basis, it was pretty much the same. That was always going to be a transition. It was always going to take some time, and I think they're starting to figure it out. But I was really encouraged by some of the things that I heard from Kane Womack. I thought he made a bunch of interesting points talking about the defensive line, talking about the Bandits, talking about the Huskies. I think you're gonna see a little bit of a step forward in year 2.
Yeah, well, I hope so, because they didn't lose last year because of the defense at the end of the season. It was definitely the offense. The Swarm played. Let's talk about the Bandit position and kind of what you're hearing in that spot, because everyone seems to be talking about Keon Keeley.
Yeah, that is something everybody always wants to know. It was like Ben Davis was that guy for the longest, right? Where every year it's like, what's going on with Ben Davis? When's he going to take that next step?
He didn't.
Keon, yeah, and you know what? I think a lot of people started feeling like, is Keon Keeley going to be that next guy? What I'm here to tell you is that kid has made improvements every single year.
Mm-hmm.
Went from being kind of playing in a different scheme under Nick Saban, more of that 3-4 base compared to the 4-2 base. That was a little bit of some change going from year 1 to year 2, and then now it's been about getting bigger. It's been about getting stronger. Like I pointed out on Twitter on Friday, just the amount of improvement that he has made as far as some of those drills, being able to hold up. One of the big issues, he was a big guy. He got up to 6'5", 277 pounds last year. Now he's up to 280, but it was more about like the functional strength. I really thought he was lacking. Mm-hmm. Very athletic guy, could probably do some stuff for you situationally, and based off body type, everybody just expects this should be one of your better run defenders out there. I mean, he's 277 pounds. He looks fantastic physically, but I think as far as like holding the point of attack, anchoring, doing all those things against the run that you need to be able to do, he was still pretty limited, and he was still growing in that area. You can tell by the way he's doing some of those sled drills, he is light years better than he was last year at that. And I think that's going to translate. And we'll go ahead, and what I'll do is I'll play some of these videos, and it's Kane Womack talking about the interior defensive line, him talking a little bit about Kelby Collins and the Bandits, and then also LT Overton, and then we'll just react to the whole thing.
Emerging on the interior of that defensive line that we may have not been talking about.
Yeah, I think you saw some guys that started taking steps in the bowl game against Michigan. I thought. Certainly, obviously, James Smith had a great game and is going to take a more central role for us moving forward. But guys, this spring that I'm noticing out there, Edric Hill's doing a really good job. Jeremiah Beeman's doing a really good job, and so we're going to have ask some of those younger players to step up in a major role this year, and so it's going to be a tough challenge for them.
Do you feel like you have enough depth on the interior? Do you feel like you have enough depth on the interior?
I don't know if I ever feel like I have enough depth on the interior, but it's certainly an area that I think from a defensive standpoint, it's probably one of our biggest areas of depth concern. That development is the best recipe for that. But certainly we'll make sure we address those needs in any way we need to before the season.
The Bandit position, just how Kelby fits into that group of returners.
Well, Kelby's doing both for us, so he's playing inside and outside, which is a lot to ask for a guy coming in new. But like some things that I see from him, he's growing and learning into the position, learning the defense, even fundamentally how we do things versus maybe where he was before. You see some differences there, but obviously from an overall position standpoint, I mean, LT Overton, Jordan Renaud, Keon Keeley's doing some really good things right now, so I'm excited about that unit.
He came like a fingernail away from like 5 sacks last season. He's gotten the pressure, hasn't gotten to the quarterback. What do you see him in terms of taking that next step?
Well, I think I got to do some things to help him out, right? There's some emphasis points of just, we talk about it all the time. If we can get indicators that there's a pass, all of our calls have a mentality that when we recognize pass, we might run a pattern and a blitz where we step on the toes of the guard and then work into the A gap, right? Or widen yourselves out a little bit as a pass rusher. So just those little nuance pieces, we're going to try to work those things, give them a chance to go cut it loose off the edge. I've said this before, LT's one of the best on-body rushers I've seen. So he does a really good job when he's on body of being able to take those little twists and moves and hand placement and footwork and all that stuff. And I think him just taking that next step and us making it as a point of emphasis, hopefully, those quarterback hurries turn into to sacks.
All right, a lot there.
Yeah, a lot to unpack. But the reason that I wanted to show people those 3 clips is, number one of the guys that we really haven't been talking about probably enough, and that's my fault, is Edric Hill. We've talked a lot about James Smith. We've talked about Tim Keenan and what he is. Jeremiah Beeman, former top 80 recruit in the country, has kind of changed his body a little bit. He's doing some really good things, playing some nose, really like how he's developing. I've talked a lot about Steve Mbomoa. And, I do want to reemphasize that Steve Mbomoa is a JUCO player. He only spent 1 year on the JUCO level, so that's only 1 year of what you would consider, I guess, college coaching. He's still raw from a technical standpoint. The overall makeup of this guy is special, and when it clicks for him, I think he's going to become a very special talent. But it is going to take him some time, and you could even see that during the practice open portions that we've been able to watch so far. He's a guy, it's like the raw power and ability is just oozing. I mean, it's everywhere, but you can tell that from a technical standpoint, he's still working on some things. But that is a guy that I've brought up a lot because I like where he could potentially be once everything starts to click. But Edric Hill is a guy, 4-star recruit himself, was, I think, 275 last year, a little bit undersized for an interior defensive lineman, still, at 282 now. That's a gain of 7 pounds. Still would say he's probably a little bit undersized, but he's a very disruptive, penetrative type of interior defensive lineman. And he gets up the field quick, very explosive first step. Hasn't really been a guy up to this point who has shown the ability to kind of hold up at the point of attack. But from, like I said, that penetrative style, very disruptive style of player. And hearing Kane Womack and Tim Keenan, he was another one that brought up Edric Hill and just the good things that he's doing, mentioned him by name. It really, I've been thinking about it. And if I had to guess, I would say probably his biggest step forward is going to be as an interior pass rusher. And I think that that's something that Alabama's missing. I think they got a little bit of juice off the edge with LT Overton or Jordan Renaud or Keon Keeley. Kelby Collins is a guy who in those obvious passing situations is probably going to be another interior defensive lineman. And that's someone that we need to be talking about probably a little bit more as far as that's concerned. But a guy like Edric Hill, when you get in those obvious passing situations, you really need some guys who can tee you off. I was thinking about it. I mean, think of a 4-man front with LT Overton and maybe a Quay Russaw, or maybe if it's an obvious passing situation, maybe someone like Yanze Pierre, who has a lot of upside as a pass rusher. And then on the interior, maybe it's kind of your nose, even though he's probably going to be playing a 3-tech over the guard, is going to be maybe James Smith and then an Edric Hill or a Kelby Collins. Whether you're talking about interior pass rushers or exterior, that's a hell of a group. And, I mean, it's going to be very difficult for 5 or 6 guys to keep up with those 4 players. And I think when you talk about creating or generating the negative plays and doing all that, which Kane Womack talked about, that would certainly go a long way.
Do you worry about depth on the defensive line? And they asked him that in the press conference. He said, well, I always worry about it, but compare it to like some of the championship teams that Alabama had with Saban. Is there a lack of depth with this team compared to some of those other ones?
Yes. And, I think situationally is what you're talking about. Tim Keenan, good run stopper. I think James Smith, good run stopper. Jeremiah Beeman, he shows a lot of upside as an interior run stopper. But really, I like James Smith as an interior pass rusher. We've already talked about Edric Hill. We've talked about, Kelby Collins potentially providing some of that. And I think that his versatility is really going to be important for Alabama's defense, the ability to play both inside and out, which Kane Womack did confirm. We had talked about that, I guess maybe it was last week or the week before, that the weight gain being 6'4", 285, I'd wondered, okay, this is a guy who's supposed to be sliding back outside. Right. He played at 278 or 277, one of the two, for Florida last year, but he's gained, another 7 or 8 pounds. So that doesn't really jive with him sliding outside. So I was like, okay, maybe he can be, instead of being one of those, bandits that's pretty much a 3-down edge, maybe he's a bandit that is able to kick inside a little bit more, like a Justin Aboybe, some of those heavy ends in Nick Saban's defense, that style of player where you get a bit of both. and Kane Wommack did pretty much confirm that. But from a pass rushing perspective, I think they got some options. Now, I still think they could probably use some more depth, but it's more of the run stopping side of things. And this is what I worry about with like a Damon Payne no longer being on the roster. If you had him, I'd feel really good about it.
Right.
But I am concerned about the interior defensive line depth, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if they ended up going to the transfer portal post spring to maybe address some of that.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I think that the college football needs to have rules on buying players, because Michigan and Ohio State right now are basically in an arms race to see who can buy the most players from other schools. And until they address that, and I think they're trying to, you're going to lose guys like Payne. You're going to lose guys like Haynes. I mean, look at it. Like Michigan's become that place where they're looking at our roster constantly and going, okay, who can we get to get better? We should be doing that, honestly. But
I think they are.
I
think that's what happened was Isaiah Horton. I mean, the telltale sign is when a guy immediately gets connected somewhere before he's ever even officially in the portal. Like Jalen Mbakwe, pretty quick to Ole Miss. Damon Payne, I guess him being a Michigan guy and coming pretty close to going there, maybe that was a connection that a lot of people were going to make regardless. But and sometimes it's kind of like Jordan Addison a few years ago before he entered the transfer portal. Everybody was saying he was going to enter the portal and he was going to end up at USC, and so he entered, and then kind of to maybe mask that a little bit, he took his time before ultimately ending up exactly where everybody said he was going to end up. So I think there's a little bit of that going on. But, Isaiah Horton immediately getting connected to Alabama, the fact that he addressed a very specific need with a high-end player to mesh and complement what you've got with Jeremy Bernard and Ron Williams, I think Alabama's playing that game a little bit too, as well, because you have to right now. I don't like it any more than anybody else, but that is the game right now. And I think Alabama, I think they should probably be doing a little bit more of it, to be honest.
Yep. Jim has a good question for you. He's saying if Hill can be that guy that they have to double team, Russaw and Keeley could be nightmare for quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that's what you're always looking at matchups and you're saying, okay, one of two things. Who's going to command multiple blockers? And then who can win those one-on-one matchups to kind of complement that? And that's why I really like some of the guys that Alabama has. Like Quay Russaw, I think he's a better pass rusher than last year indicated. I thought he was better before the knee injury. I think that certainly affected him. But I've also talked about body and him being 250 plus compared to barely over 240 now. And I think that loss of 10 pounds is probably going to help him. Will he sacrifice some on the edge setting? Potentially. But I think if you're running some more of those two bandit looks against certain defenses, against certain offenses, there could be a game where maybe you are playing a Michigan who's pretty run heavy, or a Georgia who's going to be running a lot of 12 personnel, and you say, okay, maybe we don't see as much of Russaw in this game. Maybe it's more of a two bandit look where you got Jordan Renaud, a bigger body guy, you got LT Overton, you got Kelby Collins playing out there on the edge some. I think it's the versatility with the guys that they have. I think is going to make the defense, you can build game plans around certain guys against certain opponents and be effective. Like when you've got certain players who are kind of limited, or it's like, okay, this is going to be my every week starter at this particular position, but he doesn't do certain things well, and teams are going to know that, and they're going to be able to game plan against it. When you've got the kind of versatility that Alabama does, there might be some weeks where Kelby Collins is a massive presence and makes a massive difference. And there might be some weeks where maybe you don't see him as much. It's the same thing with Quay Russaw. But I think Alabama across the board, interior pass rushers, exterior pass rushers, there's the potential. And we also know that is a point of emphasis for Kane Wommack in this defense. It's not just the sacks. It's also the tackles for loss. It's generating negative plays. I think Alabama's got a really good chance of making a significant improvement on that front in year two.
Yeah, well, that's good news. Hey, as you guys hang, don't forget covercrimson.com. Some of you guys have joined. Make sure that you're a part of it. We appreciate you so much for hanging out there. Clint's there constantly putting up information on this team, transfer portal guys, players. He's ranking players. Covercrimson.com, $25 off the annual, and it really helps us, man. It's kind of what this whole thing's about, is to build the community over there. And, 25% off the annual. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. I mean, that's, 25% off, basically. $25 off. But anyway, what you got going on over there?
Yeah, we got a lot going on, and I'm continuing on with my player rankings. I haven't done any of that in a couple of days. Going to be getting both of those, my last 2 sets. I think I got the top 12 guys left. So this is now we're getting into like the very top of the roster. Everybody knows by now. You ruined it for everybody with LT Overton. They know that he's my number 2 player.
Yeah.
Think he's going to be a massive, massive part of not just the defensive success, but the team success.
Yeah.
I think he's going to make some game-changing plays, and he's going to be a complete wrecking ball. But that's going to be a lot of fun. But it's not just that. We've got game threads going on. We've got people asking questions, and I'll be getting into some more stuff that, some of what we're talking about on here, I'll be expanding on a lot of that as far as like some different looks, as far as the defensive front, how the versatility matters. I got some great plans coming up, and going on a bachelor trip on Wednesday, my
nice.
brothers. Yeah. So that's second half of the week probably won't be as much, but we're going to really rock and roll for this first half. And then next week, when things really start cranking back up with the spring practice, we're going to be ready to hit the ground running.
So, where are you guys heading?
We're heading to a buddy's cabin in North Carolina.
Okay.
It should be, Hiawassee. It should be a lot of fun. I haven't ever been. My brother's been 50 times, but he said he loves it up there. So it's his bachelor party. We're giving him the opportunity. I hope I come back in one piece.
Yeah, you will. I'm sure I got a lot of confidence that you may have a hangover, but you'll survive. Guys, like, subscribe, thumbs up too as you hang out with us on Cover Crimson. Get those questions in if you have any questions. Talking defense today, though. So let's get into the Husky position. How's the Husky position going to look different this year than last year? And who are the guys that you really like to help Alabama here?
Well, what I thought was interesting, I'll go ahead and play the clip, and that way everybody kind of gets an idea.
I think Day was coming back from a little injury, so he's been out a little bit. Just now getting to see him a little bit there, going through individual and stuff. Been really impressed with Dre Kirkpatrick. He's doing some really good things, and then we've got a fairly deep secondary, and so there's a lot of positional crossover. So right now it's trying to figure out, once we come back from spring break, who are the guys that we're going to try to get a few extra reps at that nickel position, Husky position, and try to build depth for us as a defense, which is something that we did not have in the secondary, a year ago, and really that hurts you, right, when you're in games like Tennessee and all of a sudden our 1 and 2 Husky go down, and then our 3 Husky goes down, and somebody else is in there, and so we need to try to build that overlap.
So the reason that is, first of all, the Tennessee example that he's talking about, it directly led to Alabama losing that game. I mean, there was a lot of plays that contributed, but King Mack really, he had the physicality and everything to play Husky, but him being 5'10", that's not what you want. When you get him in those man-to-man matchups down there in the red zone, Chris Brazel, like 6'5" receiver, they kind of throw it up to him, let him go get it. Pretty easy pitch and catch, but the lack of height from King Mack when they really had to start working into that depth, that ended up being a direct contributor to Alabama losing a football game.
Yeah.
So that's what he's talking about. And what I find interesting is we've heard so many good things about Dijon Lee. We've heard so many good things about Zay Mincy and how he's progressing. We've heard good things about Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. Cam Calhoun is another one. Now we know Dre Kirkpatrick, he's been seeing reps at Husky. We know Red Morgan's been seeing reps there. We know Deshaun Jones. Those have been kind of the 3 main guys. But what I found interesting about that clip is he started saying, okay, we need some more overlap. Maybe some guys that we're looking, it's like, okay, they're doing some really good things at another spot, maybe at corner, maybe a Dijon Lee. But you know what? We got Xavier Brown, we got Damani Jackson. So it would be nice if we could get this guy some positional flexibility, despite the fact that he's a freshman. And hey, who knows? Maybe if we need to make some of those in-game adjustments, we start losing some guys like against Tennessee. Imagine if you could have put a Dijon Lee in the slot there. I don't think the result's the same. He's 6'4". I mean, the length and size would have absolutely been there. Probably a different outcome, and who knows what would have happened with the game overall. Or you're talking about, hey, Zay Mincy, hell of a safety, gonna be a hell of a safety. But you got Bray Hubbard, you got Keon Keeley, who's out for the spring. But it's like, okay, maybe we should see about, okay, how can we get him more involved? He deserves probably, he was a starter in the bowl game. He looked good. maybe we can do some things as far as moving some pieces around, maybe getting him some positional flexibility where, hey, if these things start happening, Zay Mincy is ready to come in as a safety, or he's ready to come in as a Husky. Cam Calhoun, because of what that position requires, it's very star-esque, where, there's going to be times where maybe, he's going to have to roll up on the line of scrimmage and be able to set the edge against the run. A guy like Cam Calhoun, while I think he's scrappy and I love for a guy his size, very physical, I don't think he would hold up inside. But the two guys that I would look for as far as what Kane Womack's talking about, guys who could get additional Husky reps once next week gets underway, it would probably be Dijon Lee and it would probably be Zay Mincy.
Yeah, and everybody keeps talking about Dijon Lee, just a specimen when it comes to kind of built for this position.
That's right. I mean, he's a very fun dude. He's got the right stuff mentally, and just he's one of those guys where you watch him. Kane Womack, he specifically, when he was talking about Dijon Lee, he brought up the fact that he felt very Zabian Brown-esque in kind of his approach. They're not the same player by any means, but he just means like a guy who kind of feels, you can tell with certain freshmen, like this guy kind of gets it. Dijon Lee's another one of those players. But then you start looking at perimeter corner and you're like, okay, but we got Zabian Brown, we got Damani Jackson, who's not currently out there. He's out for the spring with an injury, which is giving opportunities to Cam Calhoun and others. But Calhoun's kind of your cornerback 3 right now. I think he's going to be a pretty heavy rotational piece on the perimeter. I mean, where does Dijon Lee really see consistent action there? But if you can kind of do some different things with him, move him around a little bit, you can get him some much needed game experience. You can let him help you, whether it's on special teams, which I do think is going to be a special teams contributor, or it's on defense. And then, if injuries start to happen, you're in a really good place. And what I will say, when you start going through the list of guys who could play perimeter corner, you've got the top 3 guys, but you're obvious. You've got Dijon Lee, who seems like he's going to be a really good cornerback for you. You got Chuck McDonald, who's not on campus yet, but top 100 recruit. We'll see how he is he ready? Is he not? But then if you start having to work further into that, Deshaun Jones is a guy who could kick back outside if you really needed him to. If you got desperate enough, I'm sure if Jalen Mbakwe, like if injuries happened and Jalen Mbakwe was told, hey, maybe you're wide receiver 6 or wide receiver 7 and you're playing a little bit, but not much. But hey, we really need you back on defense. If you'll move back over there, you'll be cornerback 3 because we've got injuries or whatever. You can make that in-season adjustment. Like you could potentially have a lot of depth on the perimeter. You got really good frontline starters at all 5 defensive back spots. I think that the versatility and the depth of this secondary is going to help this defense and help this team.
Great comment here, and I want your opinion on this. Peasy, who's an awesome contributor, by the way. Peasy, man, we need to see you on covercrimson.com. I wish Kane wouldn't talk about our deep secondary. The spring portal is lurking in the background, and I guess that's what like every coach is worried about. But you look up front, and it doesn't feel like the secondary to me. The secondary feels like we're going to have problems stopping the run, and we're going to be fine against the pass. And I felt like we did have trouble stopping the run sometimes last year, but I thought we did really, really well against the pass. Your thoughts?
Well, here's the thing. Who in particular are you worried about losing? And that will be my question, because like you got Cam Calhoun, he just transferred in. He knew he's going to be involved. He wasn't promised a starting job. He knew what they had coming back. Do you think a starter's leaving? No. Okay, Dijon Lee, he's a freshman. He knows he's kind of ready, but I mean, you're kind of keeping him involved. Like Damani Jackson's going to be leaving after this year. I don't think, a freshman's just going to get on campus and he's doing good things, making a name for himself, and he's going to jump right in the portal. So, like, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Maybe a Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. You got the legacy factor there. He loves Alabama. Don't really see that being an issue. Maybe a Red Morgan, but he's expected to be part of the plans and be a rotational piece at Husky. Zay Mincy, that would probably be the one I would worry about the most. But that's only because, like, you got 2 frontline starters. You got a guy who's he kind of proved in the bowl game. There were still, from a coverage and recognition standpoint, still adjusting to safety in the bowl game. But I thought he played about as good as you could have asked him to and showed what he's going to eventually be. But it's like if you're a steady rotational piece, they're moving you around. You're showing off your versatility for the next level. You know that Keon Sabs is probably going to be his last year. You're probably not really concerned. Like, you're going to be a big time contributor this year, and then next year you're going to be a starter. It's like, I mean, I understand your concern there, but I just don't look at anybody and say, this is a guy that I'm really concerned someone else is going to come try to poach. Because like all these guys, we're expecting them to kind of all be involved to an extent.
Well, still got a lot more practice just before the end of the spring, and who knows, maybe you feel like the defensive line is a lot stronger by the time that's all said and done. I mean, we're a weekend and then spring break this week. Guys, like and subscribe. Thank you for being here. A thumbs up is a roll tide to us, and we are in a good mood. Okay, Saturday put us in a good mood. Like, that's just it. I mean, and we can finally talk a little bit of basketball without all you guys running off. I think we're there now. It's March Madness time. But we're talking football, and we're talking defense and Kane Womack. And if you want more of this conversation, 25% off right now, covercrimson.com. All right, how do we generate more negative plays?
That is the number one thing that I think is on Kane Womack's mind, because he really liked, from a turnover perspective, this defense started to get it, man. And it was, 28 turnovers last year, which was 5th in the country. Really good spot on really good position as far as that's concerned. But when you look at like kind of Kane Womack's defenses in the past, typically when it's like tackles for loss, it's sacks. There have been a couple of outliers, but it's been mostly like ranked in the 60s or the 70s. Now, he's got access to a caliber of athlete at all these spots that he's never had before. And so to expect that kind of production, even though that was kind of what happened as far as the 2024 Alabama defense, I do think you're going to see a massive step forward. But I have continued to hammer ever since Kane Womack has been hired. It is the turnovers are like the biggest part of this. It is pressuring the quarterback to get the quarterback to make poor decisions and him throwing you the football, or it's what Quay Rousseau did against Georgia, the strip sack. It's things like that. But I think because you do have this caliber of athlete that you've never had anywhere else, and you can do some things as far as mixing and matching the body types to create matchups. And what Kane Womack was talking about in one of those segments with LT Overton and kind of putting him in a better position to be successful as a rusher is there, we talk about Jalen Milroe and the fact that he was kind of tipping pass or run pre-snap, and that was really helping opposing defenses. That's the kind of thing that Kane Womack's talking about. Hey, we need to give these guys some tools, some things to look for, where it's like, hey, if you see this, it's a tell. It means it's going to be a pass, and that means you're going to adjust your alignment a little bit differently. You're going to do certain things as far as how you're going to progress throughout a play when you're running twists and stunts or whatever you're being asked to do. All of that stuff, I think, is really going to matter. Last year was so much about the fundamentals, learning what you were supposed to do. Now it's kind of continuing to get that corrected from a consistency standpoint, and it's more so focusing on the nuance of it and kind of getting creative and how you can set your players up to have better, more consistent success. And I think that you're going to see that, and that is going to lead to a lot more negative plays. I just don't think you should be expecting Alabama's defense to be ranked in the top 10 in either of those categories. I just don't think that's how Kane Womack's defenses win. But to expect them in the 25 to 30 range, I think that would be a good spot if you're ranking top 5 in the country in turnovers. That would be a completely realistic expectation, in my opinion.
I love hearing that. Because look, I think the offense is going to be a lot better this year, Clint. I really do. I think having, just a year under their belt, and also with Brian Grubb, we're going to throw the ball a lot. We're going to score points, but I don't think we're going to get worse on offense as the season progresses like we did last year. And it just felt like such a struggle to score at the end of the year.
Yeah. And one thing, Coleman, how are you going to get better on some of this stuff? By stopping the run. And then if we can't stop the run consistently, like we couldn't last year, we aren't going to go very far this upcoming year. Need to be better consistently and making sure people stay at home on defense. I do think the stopping the run aspect of this and doing it more consistently is going to help with all of it. That's a part of the generating negative plays in itself. Like right. If you stop the run for a negative 1 yard loss, that's a negative play, right? But I don't think Alabama was consistent enough on that front. Someone earlier brought up let's see. It might take me a second to find it. Yeah, C. Lewis. He said Keenan doesn't fit this defense. He's too big, stiff, and slow. That's fine as a two-gap scheme or in a two-gap scheme, but not this. I think right now you're seeing kind of a combination. Like you're still seeing guys two-gap, especially kind of your one technique, zero technique nose in those three-man fronts. Like you're still seeing kind of a combination of both. And that can be good, like the Seattle Seahawks. But one of the things that made the Legion of Boom, that unit, so special as far as up front, like his name was Red Bryant, and the guy was built like, I don't even trying to think. He was built like Tim Keenan, pretty much. I mean, he was like 6'3", like 340 or 350, and he was playing what they call an elephant end. So he was playing out on the edge, and he was this big tubby guy. And the reason for that is his specific skill set and what he could provide. It filled certain things, and their defensive front, everybody, whether you were a two-gapping player, a one-gapping player, was all specific based off of your skill set. So it wasn't like everybody's two-gapping on this play. It was kind of complicated in a lot of ways, but like that combination played to the player's skill sets. We know that Kane Womack and kind of what he does defensively in a lot of ways was kind of built in that image. And so you'll see guys two-gapping. It's not as versatile as that front was, but you will see some, situations where you're one-gapping, where you're two-gapping. But Tim Keenan's ability to stop the run, I think he did a hell of a job of that last year. I think he'll continue to do a hell of a job at that. I think he was pretty surprisingly disruptive for a guy his size, but it's not really his game. But what you want to do is you want to stop the run well, and then you want to get into those, earn the right to get after the quarterback. And if you can do that and get in some obvious passing situations, you can put certain fronts out there that really can lend itself to that, and you should be able to have a lot more success in those situations.
Awesome. Well, I guess the last question I have, and I want to tell you guys this too. Here's the deal right now. 50% off bonus, deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip when using our promo code Crimson. It's easy, Crimson. For cover Crimson, mybookie.ag. Take advantage of that. It's a pretty good deal right there, because Bama's going to win the national championship in basketball. And I'm not getting off this podcast without talking about Bama basketball, Clint. So you just get ready. We're going to talk about it. I got another football question, but I just got to suck this up a little bit. The lefty finish.
Hey, who was it? I think it was Cruz on Twitter. Great dude. Love Cruz to death. But I think he put like a futures on Alabama to win the national championship in basketball, Alabama to win the World Series in baseball, and Alabama to win the national title in football. First of all, the odds were absolutely stupid. I think like on like a $20 bet, it was like a $900,000 payout or something. But I'm like, you know what? I respect it. Yeah. Do I think that's going to happen? No, but there's a reason that you're getting such good odds, and you would be considered. I mean, at that point, if that ends up hitting and you make close to $1 million off of going bold on your not just your particular team, it's on a university. I mean, I think you would reach all-time Gump status at that point.
God, that is hilarious, man. That is absolutely hilarious. I never even thought about can you?
Bama baseball is like what, 16-0 right now?
Yeah, but they've played. They've played a couple of good.
Just saying. I mean, we're hyping. Come on, let's hype. Let's have fun with it.
I know. Look, I'm not, and I want this baseball team to be what they can potentially be. And I like Rob Vaughn, and I think that like things are going in the right direction. And when you play in the SEC, man, you got enough tough games. So why not? But and even in baseball, playing teams that you should beat doesn't necessarily mean you're going to beat them. Baseball, I mean, I saw West Alabama beat Alabama before, and some pretty good Bama teams, like you get the pitching lined up the right way and the other team's motivated. So yeah, starting 16-0, man, tip of the cap to them. But a national championship, oh man, can you imagine winning all those and becoming a millionaire based off I Alabama football?
I'll go ahead and tell you. First of all, wouldn't nobody be able to ever tell me? You wouldn't be able to tell a Bama fan nothing. Yeah, it would be. I don't know. Twitter. Is anybody else having trouble with Twitter today? By the way,
yes. Twitter's messed up today, man.
Okay, I've there for a while. I feel like it was me. I was like, hey, you say one bad thing about Auburn, and all of a sudden your Twitter starts messing up.
I was on Coach Smook had me on, and I was telling him I was trying to put my Bama tailgate shows up today on Twitter, and it was just like, I'm like, man, something's wrong with this. And then I figured something was wrong with it. I figured it out. And then he was having trouble, and we're having trouble. So anyway, all right, last football question, Clint, and we're gonna swing over and talk a little bit of hoops going into March Madness in the SEC tournament. Transfer portal, defense. Just, if you had to put your hand on the crystal ball, is there anything that we could expect or you would think could possibly happen one way or the other, coming or going?
Well, I mean, I think it would
That's
be
a tough one, Clint. It's a tough one now.
It would probably be naive of me to think that some going wasn't going to be taking place. You hope that it doesn't, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think there's a couple of spots really they can't afford to lose players. Off-ball linebacker, to me, I wouldn't say it's quite the equivalent of tight end like talked about on offense last week because, when they're healthy, the top three they're known, they're established, and they're really good. But the fact that you are missing kind of two of those guys, another one is, a transfer who just got there, and then like Caden Jones right now, him and QB Reese, through the fact that Nakai Hill-Green is still, I guess, green. As far as Alabama's defense and stuff, like it's been QB Reese and Caden Jones running with the ones for the most part. So it's like, okay, I kind of wish everybody was healthy to make sure, they were really good there. But you would expect them to be. Secondary, no. If anything, it's going. I would be shocked if they added anybody in the secondary. I think they're so deep. I think they're so talented. And I just think they got just an incredible combination of pieces there. Pass rusher, edge, Wolf, Bandit. Bandit's pretty loaded up. We're hearing really good things about Keon Keeley, and I want to reiterate that. And for those that weren't involved in the show earlier, I'll go ahead and kind of reiterate this. Last year, he was in a much better place from a body type standpoint, but the corresponding functional strength that you would expect come with that wasn't there. And I think that really limited his ability to play that position. And like against Michigan and stuff, you saw him played situationally. And I think that was because he was somewhat limited, but he had come on over the course of last year, and they felt more confident in playing him a little bit. Now we're hearing continued added weight. Technique is in a much better place. He's able to hold the point of attack a little bit better, which you've got to be able to do that Bandit position. But, Bandit, I really hope he sticks around because I think there's 4 Bandits right now who can really help. And I think the flexibility of some of these guys is really going to allow, Alabama's defense to kind of thrive. But then as far as like Wolf is concerned, with Jamarian Latham being there and being, Quay Russaw, probably the main one. Yanze Pierre, Justin Hill is a freshman. I think he's going to probably contribute in some form or fashion pretty much from day one. And I think over the course of the season, he's going to continue to get a bigger and bigger role. Really on defense, the only spot that I think you really need to try to add some bodies is on the interior defensive line, which we've already talked about. But before, like this past season, it was like, okay, who was your big-time interior pass rushers? I don't know that Alabama had any consistency there. I think they're in a better place. Like if Edric Hill's coming on like he is, Kelby Collins can do some of that. James Smith is a pretty good, he has game-wrecking potential. You're going to play some of those Bandits sometimes on the interior. I don't know that you necessarily need more interior pass rush help. I think it's more so if you had one more really good run stopper where if, an injury happens to Tim Keenan, that would make me feel a lot better about it. I don't know if that's how they'll view it, but I would say interior defensive line is certainly one to keep an eye on post-spring.
All right. Well, there you go. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. And again, make sure you're a subscriber to Cover Crimson and be a part of covercrimson.com as well. And we're on there talking, and we want you guys to be part of our community there as well. All right, let's just pivot. Moon says that we're 16-1 in baseball.
So yeah, he's right.
So he's right. Okay. I got a lot of things to pay attention to, and the baseball team's kind of low on my list right now. No offense. Okay. Well, I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying, it's football and then basketball and then
we'll hit the off season on. We'll get through spring. Tournament will come and go.
Football. Basketball.
And then we'll get, yeah. You know, I enjoy watching baseball, and you know, it's kind of like basketball, not the most knowledgeable, and it's a little bit slower, but
yeah.
I said, yeah, I'm hoping this team continues to be good. That's for sure.
They got the SEC schedule's awesome though, man. You talk about great baseball, and baseball in the college ranks is more exciting than Major League Baseball to a lot of people, just because of all the weird rules that. Yeah, it's like same thing with college. You watch that stupid kickoff that they have in the NFL, and you're like, man, what are we doing here? You know, baseball, same thing. Like they're doing all this weird stuff in the major leagues, and then you watch college, and it's like, hey, it ain't about the money today, man. It's just going out there and playing the game and playing it hard. SEC baseball last year was, to me, as good as I've ever seen it, and I love to see Bama get back in the mix again as one of those teams to beat in the conference. So, anyway, let's talk some basketball though. If you guys didn't see it yet, Bama played Saturday down at Auburn. It was their senior day. Bruce Pearl had the audacity to try to take the Crimson Crane and use it against us in our matchup. And what he found out is, bad idea, pal. They had the other guy that gets kicked out of all their big games attacking one of our players. Out he went. A beautiful finish in overtime when Mark Sears put a left-hander on him with no time on the clock, and it was great. And we play again on Friday, but I just can't get enough of the game. Was fun to watch. Grant Nelson dunked on a dude, and
no. That wasn't a dunk. That was a poster.
That was a poster. Yeah.
That one. That's one of the. I'm trying to remember. Get in the comment section if there was like a play that was. I mean, you're in their house, you make a statement, a play like that, and then just. I don't know. I thought the entire sequence was amazing.
Good, man.
You know, Chad Baker Mazzara, him getting thrown out. There's no way. I mean, and no one's really defending what he did necessarily. Like. It was clear. He pulled the elbow back and then threw it back into.
He did it on purpose.
Yeah, and with the justification that some people, Auburn fans in particular, that they're trying to use is that all this stuff happened beforehand. These cheap shots were made on Baker Mazzara, and it was retaliation. And I don't really. I mean it doesn't play in my opinion.
No, it was beautiful. Anytime you go down there and beat them like that, I mean, the Gravedigger play, oh man, that was amazing. When Bryce Young brought us back down there, you know, don't forget in 2009 when we had to come from behind. These are all football moments, but they love basketball now. Like they're the basketball bugs, and they love some basketball. and so they go, and I ran into some, you know, Clint, what I did yesterday. I was in the Boozy Bee spelling contest at the Floribama yesterday, and that's where you drink and spell. Well, I'm a terrible speller. I'm going to tell you guys that right now. But I yelled Roll Tide out a lot on the microphones in there, and it felt good. And afterwards, I ran into a group of Auburn fans, and I was just like, honestly, I'm glad that you guys got Bruce Pearl, because I never thought that there would be a day where Bama and Auburn and the state of Alabama would have two legitimate national championship contending basketball programs. It's so much fun to cover it, but it's a lot of fun just as a fan. You know, if they're not good, the win doesn't mean as much. You know, like going into the Boog Arena and just, you know, like just sucking the life out of that place on senior day. I see their best player ever. Maybe Barkley is, but they, you know, wearing, yeah. You know, and I love Barkley, putting his jersey over his head on the way out. Like, got you guys, you know, Mark Sears coming back. Oh, it was beautiful. I loved listening to Coach Oates talk after the game, and I love him too. It's been a tough stretch, man. Maybe we're a lot better now. What did we go 3-4 down the stretch with all these games that were tough? And I don't think it's going to be harder in the NCAA tournament than it was in the SEC the last 7 games for Alabama.
It will not. How could it?
No.
I mean, yeah, that And I think you faced enough adversity, but you also found enough success. Where it's like there's some humbling moments in there, certainly. Being closing, like the Tennessee one to me will always be the biggest head scratcher of the bunch, because they were clearly the better team that day.
I know,
and the way that they blew it. I mean, all the craziness that happened right there at the end of the game. I don't know that I've seen teams hand some games away. That's about as bad as I've seen in a while, though. But this is when they're playing like they were on Saturday, when Grant Nelson is playing with that kind of passion and energy, and just, I mean, across the board, it was a different fight. This team can beat anybody. I think we're all in agreement there. It's just, you got to make sure that, kind of, obviously the SEC tournament's a little bit different. You get the double bye, which is great. You'll play on Friday. But when it gets to the NCAA tournament, it's like, you got to bring it like that every game, or you're going home. Because there are teams, it doesn't really matter. We've seen some crazy upsets. I'm pretty sure there was like this Yale team that beat Auburn last year that had absolutely no business beating Auburn last year. But, speaking of Chad Baker-Mazara, he got thrown out of that game too, if I'm not mistaken. Just you gotta bring it in the NCAA tournament, or you're going home. But if they bring it like that, they can hang or beat anybody in the country. There's not a doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and it's a shame too, because Baker-Mazara is a really good defender. He's a good player, but you can't.
He's been doing it for a while.
You can't do that stuff. Yeah, I mean, like it's just it's no good. And two of the biggest games your team's had over the last couple years, you've been a liability instead of an asset. All right, Clint, I want to say this one more time. 50% off deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus $10 casino chip when using the promo code Crimson. Like Cover Crimson, mybookie.ag, and we appreciate them so much for helping us out. And you guys take advantage of that, man. Take Bama all the way. Blitz, Bama, blitz in basketball. Covercrimson.com. We're going to be on there. I was just thinking about posting the video of me doing the buzzy bee, the boozy bee, because you said I could put all that kind of stuff on there, Clint.
You can.
So I'm going to do it for you guys. I know you're going to love watching me. I'm not putting the words I spelled wrong on there. Unless.
Whoa. You got to be fair.
No. Unless we get, I'm going to have to put going to have to be 20 comments under it. Cause it's embarrassing when you can't spell stuff, and there's a reason why, cause I'm a terrible speller. And also they were giving us free alcohol. Anyway, check it out. And I know you guys love the Floor Bama. David Sprinkle, I know you're somewhere watching right now. You're a big Floor Bama guy. I saw Red Leonard there. Does anybody know Red? When I was there in December. Anyway, subscribe, thumbs up. Thanks for being here on Cover Crimson. And I guess we'll do it again tomorrow, right? Yeah, of course we will.